because today Jack will be playing Hungarian Rhapsody number 6.
Best of luck, Jack. Bravo, Jack. Bravo, beautiful performance. So Jack, I want to talk about a couple of things. The first thing I want to mention is the two most depressing things about playing the piano. The first most depressing thing about playing the piano is every note that we play dies. As soon as we play it, we are dealing with how we support it, how we make the next note louder or as loud so that we maintain a line, because every note is dying, dying, and dying. We're always dealing with the ends of the notes. The second most depressing thing about playing the piano, and this is the thing that is most important about this piece and this performance right now, Jack, is that every stroke that we make is a downstroke. So depressing. On the other hand, a violinist has the option of making an up bow. You know, they can make a note happen on an up bow. And look at the beautiful gesture that is. Of course, the fact of the matter is that most violinists, when they are making an up bow, make it sort of a nasty crescendo. We don't want to do that. But we love the idea of having the notes launched into the air, not planted into the ground. And so this particular, the Hungarian Rhapsody is extraordinarily important in this regard, because if we do every note as a downstroke, we're not giving credence to the beautiful life and exuberance that it must have been to be dancing this music. This is folk music. And so the first note that we play is actually, it should, every one of these notes, we should really make as many of these notes come alive in an up bow sort of way, in a sending it off into the air rather than planting it in the ground. The other thing that's very, very important here to note, Jack, is that we have no pedal marks whatsoever until, well, gosh, finally here. That's the first pedal mark that we actually have. It's forte here and fortissimo here, so that makes sense. And so we love to have this great sonority, all the notes ringing on the piano. In order to make that change, to be able to grow the sound from here all the way to here, and to be able to use this wonderful event of being able to use the pedal for the first time, we have to decide what we're going to do with all this music without the pedal. I mean, I don't think it's necessary to play it Bach-like and to play it completely without pedal. But my point is, we really have to send these into the air. These have to be like, we're making a downstroke if we're playing these chords on the guitar, right? But they are accompanying a physical gesture, which I'm absolutely positive is a leap into the air, right? It's a dance that is about leaping into the air in these strong beats. So we have the instinct is, of course, it's a downbeat, so we want to make it a downstroke, but it's an up bow, it's an upbeat sort of gesture because we want to make it a jump. We want to send the dancers into the air for this. And so it really helps to really have a physical attitude that is about releasing into the air. And there again, here's a slur with the eighth note, the offbeat eighth note tied to the next beat on a staccato. And so again, it's very tempting to make an accent or to give credence to the idea that these notes land on a strong beat. But the first thing that Liszt does is he accents not the downbeat, but he accents the offbeat. And he makes the downbeat and all of the ensuing strong beats, first and second of each measure, short. He makes them short because he doesn't want them to be planted. He wants them to be sent off into the air. It really pays to really feel like the keyboard has got an electric shock to it. And here's something interesting also. Our digestion of the musical score sometimes comes up against little things like this. Gesture right here. We're talking about an upbeat and the downbeat is arpeggiated. We tend to see that arpeggiation symbol as an invitation to break the chord very, very fast, very quickly. But I think it's also possible that we can use it to our advantage in terms of using the breaking of the chord. We can break a chord in a virtuoso way, or we can break the chord in an espressivo way. We can make it a lyrical break, a lyrical arpeggiation, or we can make it a brusque one, like this one at the beginning. It's like ripping a burlap sack or something. It's a very rough sort of feeling. But the point I'm trying to make here is that we have this eighth note followed by this. When we have these arpeggiated signs, our instinct is always to break it as close to that downbeat as possible. And I don't think that serves us. I think we can look at this and say, yes, we land on the top note of that arpeggiated chord on the downbeat, but what happens before that is completely up to us. Completely up to us. And so in slow motion, what I'm doing is I'm making this an upstroke, and I'm making that an upstroke, and short. And so as soon as I play this, I'm actually thinking about, I'm already reaching for that arpeggiated note. So in slow motion, I'm actually, I'm almost connecting that last eighth note, which is not a good thing, but I'm connecting it in my mind in terms of its rhythmic impetus. I'm finishing this and immediately to beginning to roll this chord. And this is really important. I don't have the camera on my foot pedals, but take my word for it. I believe that we should definitely practice this piece without pedal, because we want to get the sense of how these lengths of notes are going to contribute. We have this marked completely the same way, but I think short, short. There's a thing about staccato and about notation at all. I talk about this a lot in my Bach series. But let's say we've got a staccato quarter note that gives us a lot of variety. The way that we approach a staccato can be very different. It can be really super short, or it can be Berlin Philharmonic short. Half of an eighth note doesn't sound like very long, but compared to like an Atom Smasher short note, it's quite a lot. There's quite a lot of range of possibility in the dealing with one staccato. So I'm thinking of these staccatos as starting very short and then maybe getting a longer. I'm actually making sort of a crescendo, but not in terms of dynamic. I'm making a crescendo in terms of length. And it creates a very subconscious expectation. Whereas if we do them all the same length and all the same volume and all in the piano, we're not really getting any of the differentiation that Liszt puts in the score. So I will counsel you very, very seriously to play this passage without pedal, to practice this without pedal, and so you can figure out exactly what the lengths of these notes are. There was a very famous situation. I played the Schubert F minor Fantasy for four hands with Leon Fleischer, one of the greatest pianists to ever live. And we were playing it at a festival in La Jolla, and on one of my nights off when we weren't playing the Schubert, he was playing a Mozart concerto in piano and string quartet arrangement, and I went backstage. I mean, it was a phenomenal performance, and what I loved mostly was the texturization, the way all of the attacks and all of the textures were so lovingly created. And I was just a shameless fanboy backstage, and I just went on and on about it. Leon just very soberly, didn't cut me off, but he said, as pianists, we have 3 jobs. Pushing the notes down, picking the notes up, and how we interrelate them. And so when I refer to Leon's second law, that's what I'm talking about. We always have a good idea, and we always practice very, very hard so that we can always, have a good sense of pushing the notes down. But as far as picking the notes up, we don't really pay much attention to it. We often tend to, we relegate the authority to picking up the notes to the pedal. So the note gets released whenever we release the pedal, whenever that is. And that's not good. That's not really taking full responsibility, particularly of Leon's second law. We have to determine with our fingers how long these notes are. If we want to add resonance, we add the pedal. But if we want to determine the length of every one of these notes, it has to be with our hands. Pay attention to the fact that there really isn't very much pedal mark, so we really want to have a very joyful and engaged sense of how we interrelate these releasings of notes. Could you play once more just the opening? And I want you to play it without pedal, and I want you to really try and make all of these downbeats upbeats. I want your hands to jump off, and I want it no pedal, and let's get these dancers leaping into the air on all these strong beats, shall we? Go ahead. Good. That's great, Jack. We can actually use the pedal here, or we can actually take those bass notes with the left hand. The advantage of that is that we have the advantage of actually changing the lengths within one note. Within this 8th note here, I'm actually holding the right hand over. I understand why he marks this, because I think there's nothing more exuberant, and I used to watch Leonard Shure make the slurs happen with his hands. It would really be, and sometimes it wouldn't be necessarily accurate, but he would really, and I'm not using any pedal here, he made a true physical legato. As much as was possible, he made that kind of leap. So we have to try and do as much of that as we possibly can. We need to have that sense of really having the ability to take these chords and make them into voices, some of which are more important than others. So I love the idea of leaving this right hand a little bit held over while it makes for a much more singing texture. Notes that really need to sing are singing. Not all of these notes are as important. That brings me to my next point here, which is the presto. I want to go very, very slowly here, because I want to point out to you, Jack, that first of all, it's all piano. Remember when I was talking about our trying to vary the length and vary the length of notes that we want to hold or just make more resonant? I think we can't look at this like a little 4-part chorale. We have to, and I'm going to exaggerate this, but I want to show you exactly what I want to hear. I want to hear the upper voice a little bit more, not just in terms of volume, because I know you can do that, Jack, but I want you to do very slowly for me, and I want you to really exaggerate the volume between the top voice and all the other voices, and more importantly, I want you to vary the length so that the only note that's held to its full length, in this case, the first note is a staccato quarter note. So we're going to say that the top voice is going to be the Berlin Philharmonic style of staccato quarter note. It's going to be an eighth note. And the supporting voices are going to have a shorter length. So like this. We don't have to play it very loud at all, and it's a good thing because we're playing, it's marked piano in the score. You know, we really have to follow the rule of law here, and keep all of it piano. But we make the melody come out by virtue of its being the only voice sounding, because we'll make all the rest of these. I don't have to pick out that top voice. I don't want the other voices to be fighting it. I want it to be really just on its own. So Jack, I want you to try that slowly from that presto place. Just as slowly as you can allow yourself to listen to the sound that you're making, and also be conscious of the length, so that the top voice, the melodic voice, is going to be slightly longer than all the accompanying voices. Give it a try. Experiment. That's excellent. That's excellent, Jack. That's extraordinary. What you just did, and what that adds, Jack, is profile. And depending on how much you want to bring out the top voice as opposed to the other voices, or how much, well, and here it is, we have the whole section repeated. So if we want to do it very strictly, just the main voice the first time through, and if we want to have more of a party the second time, we can make the second time more of a situation where we're actually engaging more of the voices. Do you see what I mean? So now we have a reason to do the repeat. The first time through, it's a solo voice. The second time through, it's a chorale, as you say. Presto means really, really fast, but essentially it means as fast as you can play. And what I'm doing now is I'm adding some extra stress, because I'm saying, I think we want to have a little bit of space in this so that it's a little bit more narrative. It's more of like telling a story rather than doing a dance. You know, there's a little bit of a surprise. There's a little bit of a hitch in the time, and that draws our attention to it. And because the most important thing about tempo is, Jack, we have to play the tempo. The tempo doesn't play us. So anytime you need to make the difference between that forte and the subito piano, take whatever time you want. And it might be more and more time as it goes on. And it might be more time between those sections on the repeat. Can you do a little bit under tempo and just give me a sense of how we're going to play around between that forte and the subito piano, okay? Yeah. Now, Jack, did you see? That was even if we're playing it this slow, that was too soon, because did you hear? It wasn't exactly the same kind of sculpted and newly balanced sound that you had on the first measure. So make sure that you have enough time to get from here to here, so that you can do that with a piano dynamic attitude as well as just executing it. Try again from the beginning. That's wonderful. That's right, Jack. That's right. It's something that we can play with. It's not, we don't have to do it in metronomic time. It's very intimidating to see that presto mark and we want to move, but it's basically more rhetorical. This one is more storytelling than dancing, okay? I want to move on a little bit, because one of the more important things that we do and we don't pay enough attention to is we don't pay enough attention to the rests. And rests can be very important, like in my demonstration of making this voice. All of those situations in which we are able to have the last voice sounding is the best way and the easiest way to make sure that it sings. And so in this passage, we want to do two things. We want to take care of the dynamics. The dynamic here is mezzo forte espressivo. And Liszt often, though not in this particular instance, but even in his earliest works, like the Symphonie Fantastique arrangement, he would oftentimes make different dynamics for the right hand and the left hand. And that's a good suggestion, particularly in this instance, because mezzo espressivo, what does it mean? First of all, espressivo is like my least favorite marking in the world. Why is that? It's my least favorite marking in the world because it's like the composer saying, play this expressively. And you're saying, wait, like I've been playing this like a cold fish all this time? Geez, give me a break. Espressivo means, I think, it's going to be a little bit out of tempo, so it can be very free, and you play it with a wonderful sense of freedom. But what we want to address here is the dynamic, the mezzo forte dynamic. The espressivo refers to the right hand, to the melody, so that to make an overall mezzo forte dynamic, it has to be comprised of the dynamic level at which you play the melody is quite wonderful, and it sings and it's beautiful. I think it can sing a little bit more if you allow, well, and he marks una corda here too. If you allow these voices, the accompaniment voices, to not be mezzo forte espressivo. That refers only to the melody. In order to make a composite singing espressivo mezzo forte, we need to make the accompaniment less. I mean, if I was doing it like a pianist would normally do, we'd want to have a nice framed, balanced sound, But I'm saying that I find that the most interesting musical textures are those made up of contrasts and conflict even. But just a very wide disparation of our voices dynamically, so that when I play this, I'm actually. This is the only voice that I'm playing mezzo forte. This voice, I'm playing this. That's really as soft as I'm playing it, and I really think that's kind of a Horowitz trick, actually, as a matter of fact. That he used to be able to have this great singing sound. How does he do it? Well, in a passage like this, he would play the melody mezzo forte, and he would play the accompaniment triple piano. That's just that's the easiest way to make a piano sing, is not by bringing out the melody, not by pushing out the sound, but by sculpting the sound, by making a new balance of the sound, so that the melody is always on top and it never is interfered with or competed with by the accompaniment. Can you try this a little bit? Just a little bit of experimentation from you, Jack. So sing out that melody like you are, but make sure that all those accompaniment chords are very soft. Try it. See, a little too loud, right? Try even more drastic difference, okay, Jack? Just try it on for size. We're experimenting here. Go ahead. Good, Jack. Good. Can you see the score that I've got in front of us now? Because I circled a couple of things that were important for us to take note of, because there were lots of places where I didn't feel like you were paying attention to the rest. There's a rest there. Let's hear it. There's another rest. And it's very important because he marks it with a fermata, but he still marks this as a rest. So we want to hear this voice unaccompanied for a second. And that's also going to make it easier to sing, because it's the last voice sounding. and the rest. Well, and look at that. Here's the first place. This is the first place in the score where he marks the left and right hand to be released at the same time. So make sure that you play the rests, okay? You want to play all of those rests. Make sure, this is where they started really bothering me. No fermatas. And see how nice that is, so that this one is rather short. You know, sort of sudden. And now long. All of this sort of looks the same. You know, it happens on, you know, on regular beats, the accompaniment, but it's two different functions. One is an interruptive, a surprising eighth note accompaniment, and the other one is a long note that we want to keep absolutely very, very long here. So, and again, here, the rests here are very, very important. Rests here are very, very important. And then this, I marked, this is this beautiful section that you did that I marked actually as counterpoint. I want you to play that passage slowly, and I want to have more of a sense of it being counterpoint, the upper voice and the bottom voice in that two-note pattern. Because right now it just sounds like a big nattering, you know, bunch of grace notes. Beautifully played, but I'd love to have more of a sense of the. So I'm actually making a little bit of a dip dynamically. I'm not playing them equal to equal dynamics. Right? I'm actually making two voices out of one, so it's more like. Do you hear that? So that we hear all the notes, but we actually hear one voice as one voice. Can you try that slowly for me? Good. That's great, Jack. And of course, I loved very much when you made your crescendo down into the bass. That was very, very effective. Now, I want to go to the end of the piece now, and this our favorite thing, our little. Now, I would love to be able to have more of a sense of what it would be like to play this piece on the violin. And I love the idea of using this idea of the slur, the idea of grouping notes. How do we make notes belong together? I'm thinking particularly about this passage. I try very hard not to play all of these as downstrokes. I'm starting to do it a little bit sort of internally grouping that way. And I'd go so farther and actually say downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat. Do you see that, Mark? So instead of, I'm trying to do. So I'm actually here's one of my favorite markings. I think all music should have more of this in it. I think we should actually have parentheses around notes that aren't necessarily as important. These notes that I put parentheses around are sort of rebounds. They're not. We don't need to start the piece over again. We can actually do it. And here especially, we want to have this. These are things that will make it very, very much easier to play this piece if we are actually grouping these notes together in terms of what energy it takes to actually play them in that tempo. We really need to have a much more gradual and a much more palpable sense of in and out, up and down. This is very, very, very important and very hard to practice. Like my friend Leonard Shore. Let's actually pretend that we actually have a slur from. So we actually are trying to make a connection here, a strong impetus, a weak impetus, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong. It's much easier that... So you see, we don't have to use that much energy, and we actually end up giving more clarity that way. The other very, very important thing I want you to take note of, Jack, is that look at the dynamic here. I understand when we start the octaves, we want to get in there and make them as brilliant as possible. But he marks this piano. He marks it piano here. He marks it sempre piano here. And then he marks it dolcissimo. So it's really a matter of he's asking you to really we want to keep our powder dry. In other words, we don't want to give the game away altogether, right away. We want to allow him to say what the dynamics are supposed to be. When we get here, here's the crescendo, and it's only here that even here it's not any more than forte. And then here, when we finally get here, I want you to, I think it's very, very important that you decide who the boss is. In this passage, it's the melody. The melody is in the left hand. All of that is in the melody, and we want to do this leggero. He has it marked leggero, and I've got it marked accompaniment. I want you to play the melody mezzo forte, but I don't think you need to have the top voice, the accompaniment, any louder than mezzo piano or something. He actually only marks the left hand mezzo forte. He does not give you any dynamic marking here. He does mark leggero, which means easy, playful. So again, it's not loud here. It's forte back here. It's only mezzo forte here and very light here. Can you try that passage for me, Jack? Thanks. Yeah, Jack. I only hear the right hand. We don't need to hear the right hand at all. The fact that the physics of the piano make it impossible for us to ignore the right hand. I want you to concentrate on the left hand. I want you to bring out in a singing fashion the left hand. And I also want you to take account of the fact that when we play octaves, we're actually playing two voices, the top voice and the bottom voice. It's not just an amalgam of who we want. And we also have a tendency to make the bottom of our left hand octaves the loudest part, and we actually want the top of the octave to be the one that's singing because it's a melody. Try it again. Good. Excellent. Excellent, Jack. That's excellent. Now go to the bottom of the page. Do you see where it says più rinforzando and stringendo? I think, yeah, because rinforzando means to reinforce, really. And so he wants to do two separate things at the same time. He wants it to be very, very strong, and yet he wants it to get faster too. So I want you to do a couple of things. I want you to, as we get more into the rinforzando, I want you to make each of these eighth notes longer, and I want you to not let go of them quite so soon. But then I want you to play them in a faster tempo as we get more and more moving along. What happens usually is we see the rinforzando and stringendo, and we just do the stringendo. If we can do both, it's going to be really frightening and really exciting. Longer. Good. So Jack, I want you to make each of those eighth notes longer, but then I want you to get faster. So let's try it one thing at a time. I want you to play just those eighth note octaves, right? And I want you to play them all just in one slow tempo, but I want you to make each of the eighth notes slightly longer. Try it right there. Longer. Yeah, no, Jack, I want you to not get faster, but I want to hear each of those eighth notes get longer. Okay? Try it again. Even the ones on the bottom. Not just the ones on the top, but the ones on the bottom too. Every eighth note, a little bit longer every time. Longer. This is pretty good, but this, sorry. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for length on every one of them. Good. Now I want you to start that passage with a little shorter notes, but get longer and then get faster also. Try the right from there. Faster. Good. Excellent. That's what we need to do. And that's just like one tiny little detail in the score there. All of the things that are in the score, not just in terms of the continuum of playing a piece of music, but looking at that one moment in the score and saying, how can I execute what the composer is asking me to do? It's problematic because we're always trying to work these pieces up to tempo, and we have no time to really deal with how we can make a more original sense of balancing in these situations. And I think it's very, very important that we take that into account. Every notation that we have is an opportunity for invention and variation and imagination. But we have to take them one thing at a time. And we also, as you can tell, Jack, it's very, very important that we actually have the opportunity to play very, very, very slowly. I'm a great believer in practicing slowly, not just for technical reasons to make our piano playing much more solid, but also to be able to play slowly so that we can experiment, so we can actually hear how we can make the top melody note a little bit longer than all the rest of the notes. We can't do that when we're practicing up to tempo. The other thing that it does, I mean, practicing slowly gives you the opportunity to do that kind of experimentation, but it also makes you much more solidly planted in the piano. So that I usually practice something slow, slower, and slowest. So that the last time that I practice that passage is the slowest. It's not like, oh, play it 3 times and kind of work it up to tempo, because then the last time you play it is up to tempo. And then when you come to the concert stage and you have no roots. If you practice the last time slowly, you're really planting it in the ground. And so then if you get a little excited, it's okay. Jack, it's been a real pleasure. And I applaud your very, very fine work, and I appreciate you taking the time and effort to do some experimentation with me. So that's been really, really great. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. O'Reilly, for taking time out of your day to give us this wonderful masterclass. We really appreciate it, and we feel really honored. And before we close it out, I guess I have a never-ending supply of questions. So
sure, of course.
Here is another one for you. I guess I was wondering, since you did play this piece when you were in 5th grade and now obviously have such a deeper understanding of it, I guess we can say that you've undergone evolution in your Hungarian Rhapsody play.
Mm-hmm.
What is one of the biggest ways your playing has changed and evolved over the years?
I think my playing has evolved and changed over the years very, very radically only in the last couple of years, and it's been because of my rethinking of notation, and as I explained in my discussion about articulation and staccato in particular, that every mark has within it a range of possibilities. It's not always the same. We don't necessarily have to play 3 in a Mozart concerto. We can have, they're marked 3 staccato 8th notes, but they can actually maybe start a little short and get a little bit longer. That kind of thing. These are freedoms within these tiny little parts of notation: dynamics, phrase marks, articulation, balance. These are all things that we have control over, and we can vary. The idea of a dynamic marking as something that tells us how to play all of these notes just doesn't exist. We're making a mezzo forte espressivo, and that can be a combination of elements. It can be a combination of a very forthright espressivo melody and a very diaphanous and taking attention to the rests, a kind of a much more soft sound. So every one of these parameters, and it's interesting that I discovered all this stuff working on Bach, who has very rarely any kind of notational stuff on the page. But it really made me think in terms of how notes belong together, how we differentiate voices, the idea of making different lengths of different notes so that all staccatos are not created equal, so that there are as many articulations as there are consonants in the German language, as we would talk about Bach as a vocal composer. We have to think about the time that we take to try and make the piano a singing instrument. and we have to use that to our advantage. Use all of these notational variations and inventions and imagination to make that happen. So I think it's been my work on the well-tempered clavier in the last couple of years that really has revolutionized my playing. It's actually changed. It's changed my playing, not just of Bach, but of everything.
Yeah, every staccato is not created equal, what is saying by Mr. O'Reilly. And yeah, I guess I really like what you said about freedom as we continue to grow and evolve and, improve our playing and have freedom with it. So that hopefully we can move forward and our music falls under the good category and not the other category. Before, I think that's the end of our masterclass today. I'll turn it over to our youth director, Angela, for some final closing words.
Well, Catherine, it's been a great, great pleasure and a great honor speaking with you. So thank you. Thank you for your wonderful questions.
It's been my honor to interview you. Thanks. You so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Reilly, for coming and teaching these wonderful young musicians. It was truly a pleasure having you on our show, and I'm sure everyone really enjoyed it and learned a lot from this class, so thank you so much. And before we conclude, I would just like to remind everyone to follow us on our socials for further updates on future master classes. Our official website is opusmusicfoundation.org, and our Instagram is @opusmusicfoundation. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Love you guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everybody. Glad you enjoyed it. I had a great time. Loved it.